a cup that grants eternal life, a vessel touched by Christ, or a treasure so powerful that kings, knights, and secret societies have killed to protect it. What is the Holy Grail? For centuries, this legendary artifact has inspired some of the most famous stories in human history. But here's the real question. Is everything we think we know about the Grail completely wrong? Spoiler alert, it's probably not a magical cup sitting in a knight's treasure chest, but the truth is even stranger. The Holy Grail isn't just a relic of medieval imagination. It's a story that has evolved over the centuries, connecting myths, history, religion, and even archaeology. From the tales of King Arthur's knights and the secrets of the Templars, to modern-day claims of hidden locations and blockbuster films, the Grail continues to captivate. But its greatest mystery might surprise you. Some believe the Grail isn't even a physical object. What if it's a symbol, an eternal metaphor for humanity's deepest aspirations? Welcome to Armchair Archaeology, where we explore the mysteries of history, one discovery at a time. Today, we'll uncover the Grail's fascinating origins, its ties to Arthurian legend, its possible locations, and even its surprising links to pagan myths. And stick with us until the end, because we'll reveal one of the most mind-blowing theories about the Grail, a twist that just might change how you think about this iconic legend forever. Before we dive in, if you enjoy exploring history's hidden secrets, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Armchair Archaeology. Your support helps us keep bringing you incredible stories from the past. And if you're as captivated by history's hidden secrets as we are, you'll love our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World, Mysteries, Technologies, and Lost Civilizations, from lost cities to ancient technologies. It's your guide to exploring the past in a whole new way. Find the link in the pinned comment. Now, here's a twist you might not see coming. The Holy Grail, one of the most enduring symbols in Western culture, didn't originate in ancient scripture or archaeological discovery. It began as a literary invention. The first mention of the Grail appears in a 12th century romance by the French poet Chrétien de Troyes titled Percival, The Story of the Grail. In this work, written around 1190 CE, the Grail was not described as a cup or even as a holy object. Instead, Chrétien depicted it as a luxurious serving dish used in a mysterious ritual to sustain a wounded king. The story follows Percival, a young knight of King Arthur's court, as he witnesses a puzzling and symbolic procession featuring the Grail. But Chrétien's tale ends abruptly. He died before completing the story, leaving the Grail's meaning unresolved. This ambiguity fascinated later writers who reinterpreted the Grail to reflect their own cultural and religious values. By the 13th century, authors like Robert de Boron transformed the Grail into something entirely new, a sacred Christian relic. In his poem, Joseph d'Arimathie, Robert identified the Grail as the cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper, and later by Joseph of Arimathea to collect Christ's blood at the crucifixion. This Christianization of the Grail added profound spiritual significance, turning it into a symbol of divine power and redemption. The speed of this transformation is striking. Within just a few decades, the Grail had evolved from an ambiguous narrative object into one of Christianity's most important relics. Its rapid shift in meaning reflects how myths are shaped by the societies that tell them, adapting to the values and beliefs of their time. While Chrétien de Troyes introduced the Grail in Percival, it was its integration into the Arthurian legend that transformed it into a cultural cornerstone. By the 13th century, writers like Wolfram von Eschenbach and Sir Thomas Malory wove the Grail into the tales of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, elevating it from a mysterious object into a symbol of ultimate spiritual achievement. In Wolfram's Parzival, The Grail takes on a mystical quality, no longer a simple serving dish, but a glowing stone with divine powers, guarded by a secretive order of knights. This supernatural reinterpretation shifted the Grail's role in the legend, emphasizing awe and wonder. By the time Malory wrote Le Morte d'Arthur in the 15th century, the Grail had been fully Christianized. Malory connected it to the Last Supper and the crucifixion, framing the quest for the Grail as a moral and spiritual trial. Malory also introduced Sir Galahad, the purest and most virtuous of Arthur's knights, whose unwavering faith makes him the only one capable of achieving the Grail. This character and his journey turned the quest into a test of spiritual worthiness, reflecting the Christian values of the medieval period. What's striking about the Grail's role in Arthurian legend is how late it was added to the mythos. Early Arthurian stories, like Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britannia, were focused on political intrigue, heroic battles, and magical adventures. The Grail didn't appear in these foundational tales. Its later inclusion transformed the Arthurian world, imbuing it with spiritual allegory and aligning it with the medieval church's emphasis on salvation and divine grace. This fusion of chivalric heroism and religious devotion ensured the Grail's place as a symbol of humanity's highest aspirations, a prize sought not just for glory, but for spiritual enlightenment. By the 13th century, the Holy Grail had been transformed from a mysterious literary object into one of the most sacred symbols of Christian devotion. Writers like Robert de Boron reimagined the Grail as a relic directly connected to the life of Christ. In his poem, Joseph d'Arimathie, Robert described the Grail as the cup used by Jesus during the Last Supper, and later by Joseph of Arimathea to collect Christ's blood at the crucifixion. This interpretation elevated the Grail into a vessel of divine power and redemption, making it one of the most revered relics in medieval Europe. At a time when holy relics were seen as tangible links to the divine, the Grail fits seamlessly into Christian tradition. Like the True Cross or the Shroud of Turin, it became a sacred object that represented ultimate spiritual grace. Yet the Grail's significance went beyond its physical form. The idea that only the pure of heart could achieve the Grail emphasized its role as a test of moral and spiritual worthiness, making the quest a journey of transformation rather than a simple pursuit of treasure. However, not all interpretations of the Grail are tied to Christianity. Scholars have pointed out that the Grail's symbolic meaning, abundance, renewal, and the search for divine wisdom, echoes themes found in pre-Christian traditions. For example, pagan myths from Celtic cultures describe magical cauldrons that provide endless sustenance or grant enlightenment. These parallels suggest that the Grail's deeper meaning may predate Christianity, blending older traditions of sacred vessels with medieval religious ideals. Think of the Cauldron of Dagda from Irish mythology, a bottomless pot of abundance, like an ancient version of the unlimited buffet. It never ran out of sustenance and symbolized renewal. Similarly, the Welsh Cauldron of Anwen was hidden in the otherworld and guarded by supernatural forces, a bit like a mythical treasure vault. Only the bravest could retrieve it. Doesn't that remind you of Arthurian knights on their Grail quests? And this is where the story takes on a life of its own. By incorporating these ancient themes, the Grail became more than just a Christian relic. It evolved into a universal symbol of humanity's eternal quest for meaning, transcending both time and religion. What's your take on this Christianization of the Grail? Do you think it adds depth to the legend or makes it less universal? Let us know in the comments. No discussion of the Holy Grail would be complete without mentioning the Knights Templar, one of the most mysterious and controversial organizations of the medieval world. Founded in the early 12th century to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, The Templars rose to extraordinary power, amassing wealth and influence across Europe. Their secrecy and sudden downfall in 1307 fueled centuries of speculation, including the theory that they were the protectors of the Holy Grail. According to legend, the Templars may have discovered the Grail during the Crusades. Some accounts suggest they excavated relics beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the site of Solomon's Temple where they were stationed. These relics, it's claimed, included the Grail, or knowledge of its whereabouts. Whether the Grail was a literal object, secret knowledge, or something else entirely, the Templars' rumored connection to it became a cornerstone of Grail lore. When King Philip of France arrested the Templars in 1307, accusing them of heresy and dissolving the order, the mystery deepened. According to some accounts, the Templars managed to hide their greatest treasures, including the Grail, before their capture. Possible hiding places like Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland or Montségur in France are still tied to these legends. What's fascinating is how the Templars' connection to the Grail grew long after their demise. In the 19th century, Romantic writers and conspiracy theorists reimagined the Templars as guardians of secret knowledge, linking them not only to the Grail, but to broader mysteries of divine power. These stories cemented the Templars' place in Grail mythology, blending history and legend into a tale of forbidden treasures and spiritual quests that continues to captivate us. Over the centuries, countless locations have been linked to the Holy Grail, sparking treasure hunts, pilgrimages, and endless speculation. Among the most famous claims is the chalice housed in Valencia Cathedral, Spain. Known as the Holy Chalice, this artifact is a richly decorated agate cup that dates back to the 1st century CE. Some believe it to be the Grail used at the Last Supper. While historians acknowledge its antiquity and craftsmanship, there is no definitive proof connecting it to Christ, leaving its identity shrouded in mystery. Other locations are just as enigmatic. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, with its elaborate carvings and rumored ties to the Knights Templar, is a popular candidate. Built in the 15th century, the chapel has become a focal point for theories about hidden treasures, with some believing the Grail lies concealed within its walls. Glastonbury Abbey in England also carries a powerful association with the Grail, bolstered by legends that Joseph of Arimathea brought the relic there, burying it in the abbey grounds. More speculative theories suggest the Grail may be hidden in remote, mystical places. Montségur, a fortress in southern France, was the last stronghold of the Cathars, a heretical Christian sect persecuted by the Catholic Church. Stories claim the Cathars smuggled sacred treasures, possibly including the Grail, out of Montségur before their fall in 1244. These claims reveal how the Grail's meaning has shifted across cultures and centuries. Whether imagined as a tangible artifact or a symbol of spiritual power, its elusiveness continues to fuel the idea that it could still be hidden somewhere, waiting to be uncovered. And if secret societies, lost relics, and the mysteries of history captivate you, don't miss our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World. Check the pinned comment to get your copy. While the Holy Grail is most commonly associated with Christian theology, some scholars argue that its origins may lie in far older, pre-Christian traditions. Across Celtic mythology and other pagan belief systems, there are stories of sacred vessels that bear striking similarities to the Grail. These vessels often symbolized abundance, transformation, and even resurrection, concepts that later became central to the Christianized Grail legend. One prominent example is the Cauldron of Dagda from Irish mythology. This magical cauldron, said to belong to a god-king of the Tuatha De Danann, provided endless sustenance and never left anyone hungry. Similarly, in Welsh mythology, the Cauldron of Anwen was a mystical vessel hidden in the otherworld and guarded by supernatural forces. Only the bravest and purest could retrieve it. In one tale, King Arthur himself ventures into the other world to claim it, a storyline that echoes later Arthurian quests for the Grail. The processions described in some Celtic myths also align with Chrétien de Troyes' depiction of the Grail in Percival, where the Grail is carried in a ritualistic parade. These parallels suggest that the Grail legend absorbed elements of older pagan traditions, blending their themes of fertility, renewal, and divine power into a Christian context. This blending of traditions wasn't unusual in medieval Europe. As Christianity spread, it often incorporated and reinterpreted older myths to align with its teachings. The Grail, with its life-giving and transformative qualities, may have started as a symbol of pagan abundance before being reimagined as a Christian relic of salvation. Its universal resonance, rooted in these overlapping traditions, helps explain why the Grail continues to fascinate people across cultures and beliefs. Could these ancient myths be the real inspiration behind the Grail, or is it purely a medieval construct? Share your thoughts in the comments. The Holy Grail is one of the most famous and sought-after relics in history, but here's the question: was it ever a real object? Despite centuries of speculation, no definitive archaeological evidence has ever been found to confirm its existence. Some scholars believe the Grail is purely a literary creation, while others argue it could have been inspired by real historical artifacts. One possibility is that the Grail was modeled after chalices used in early Christian rituals. For example, the Antioch chalice, a silver cup dating back to the 1st century CE and now housed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, has often been linked to Grail stories. Though the Antioch chalice was once thought to be the cup of the Last Supper, modern scholars believe it's more likely a ceremonial object. Still, its intricate design and ancient origins highlight how ordinary objects could become legendary over time. Alternatively, some researchers argue the Grail was never a physical object at all. Instead, it may have been a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment, divine grace, or the ultimate human aspiration for transcendence. This symbolic interpretation aligns with later Arthurian stories where only the purest of heart, like Sir Galahad, can achieve the vision of the Grail. The journey to find it becomes more important than the object itself, reflecting the idea of personal and spiritual growth. What makes the Grail so compelling is this duality. It could be a relic, a literary invention, or a profound symbol of human aspiration. Its mystery has endured not because it has been found, but because it speaks to something universal: our desire to seek and discover meaning, no matter how elusive the goal. The Holy Grail may have its roots in medieval literature, but its modern fame owes much to pop culture. Over the past century, the Grail has taken on new life in films, books, and television, where it has become a symbol of adventure, mystery, and even humor. These portrayals have shaped how people today imagine the Grail, blending legend with creative interpretation. One of the most iconic depictions of the Grail comes from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. In this 1989 blockbuster, the Grail is portrayed as a humble cup, hidden in an ancient temple guarded by a knight who has lived for centuries. The film popularized the idea of the Grail as an object with miraculous powers, capable of granting eternal life, but only for those wise enough to recognize its modest, unadorned nature. I mean, who wouldn't expect the most powerful artifact in history to look like something you'd pick up at a yard sale? On the opposite end of the spectrum, Monty Python and the Holy Grail took a comedic approach, parodying the Grail legend and medieval quests in absurd and unforgettable ways. The film's portrayal of the Grail as an elusive and almost pointless goal reflects its humorously critical take on both legend and history. Despite its silliness, Monty Python has had a lasting influence, introducing generations to the Grail story in a way that's both ridiculous and memorable. Then there's the Da Vinci Code, which sparked global fascination in the early 2000s by presenting a completely different idea that the Grail isn't a cup at all, but a metaphor for the bloodline of Christ. Though fictional, Dan Brown's thriller reignited interest in the Grail, blending historical conspiracy with religious mystery. These modern portrayals have ensured that the Grail remains relevant in today's imagination. Whether as an artifact of divine power, a parody of medieval obsession, or a symbol of hidden truths, the Grail continues to inspire stories, proving that its legend is as enduring as ever. Ready to explore even more fascinating connections between ancient myths and human aspirations? Grab your copy of Secrets of the Ancient World via the link in the pinned comment. Beyond its identity as a relic or an object of legend, the Holy Grail endures because of what it represents: the ultimate quest. Throughout history, the Grail has served as a metaphor for humanity's deepest desires, symbolizing the search for enlightenment, spiritual fulfillment, and meaning. Its significance lies not just in its supposed power, but in the journey required to attain it. In medieval literature, the Grail quest was depicted as a test of moral and spiritual worthiness. Knights like Sir Galahad and Sir Percival didn't just seek the Grail, they had to prove themselves worthy of finding it. Galahad's purity and devotion make him the ideal seeker, showing that the Grail could only be achieved by those who embodied the highest virtues. In this way, the Grail became a mirror for the soul, reflecting the inner struggles and aspirations of those who pursued it. The Grail's symbolism extends far beyond Arthurian legend. Psychologists like Carl Jung interpreted the Grail as a universal archetype, a symbol of the human spirit's quest for wholeness. In Jungian terms, the Grail represents the search for the self, the process of integrating all parts of one's personality to achieve inner harmony. This perspective suggests that the Grail speaks to something timeless and deeply personal, resonating across cultures and belief systems. The idea of the quest itself is key to the Grail's power. Its unattainability mirrors our own experiences in life, where the pursuit of purpose or perfection often seems just out of reach. The Grail reminds us that the journey matters as much as, if not more than, the destination, a lesson that continues to inspire countless interpretations of the Grail's meaning. The Holy Grail remains one of the most powerful symbols in human history, continuing to inspire awe and curiosity long after its medieval origins. Though its story began in the pages of 12th century romances, it has transcended time, culture, and belief systems to become a universal icon of mystery, aspiration, and human imagination. What makes the Grail's legacy so enduring is its adaptability. For Christians, it represents the sacred cup of Christ, a relic tied to the Last Supper and the crucifixion. For others, it is a symbol of spiritual perfection, embodying the pursuit of divine grace or enlightenment. And in modern interpretations, it's been reimagined as a metaphor for hidden truths or even a physical treasure still waiting to be discovered. So what do you think? Is the Grail a forgotten relic or something far more profound, a symbol of humanity's greatest aspirations? The Grail's ability to evolve with time is key to its mystique. Unlike relics tied to specific locations or events, the Grail has no fixed form or universally accepted identity. It can be a chalice, a stone, a cauldron, or an abstract concept. This ambiguity allows every generation to interpret the Grail in its own way, keeping the legend alive across cultures and centuries. Perhaps the Grail's greatest power lies in the ideas it inspires. Its story reflects humanity's enduring quest for meaning, truth, and self-discovery. Whether viewed as a relic of divine power or a metaphor for personal transformation, the Grail reminds us that the most important journeys are not about finding an object, but about the growth, knowledge, and understanding gained along the way. The Grail may never be found, but that's precisely why it continues to captivate. It's not just a treasure to be uncovered, it's a reflection of humanity's highest aspirations, a symbol of our unending search for something greater. The Holy Grail is more than a relic or a medieval legend. It's a symbol that has evolved through the centuries, reflecting humanity's deepest aspirations. From its origins as a mysterious serving dish in Percival to its transformation into a Christian relic and a cornerstone of Arthurian legend, the Grail's story has transcended time. It has been reinterpreted as a sacred chalice, a symbol of spiritual enlightenment, and even a metaphor for hidden truths, proving its unmatched adaptability. Here's the fun fact we teased at the beginning. Some believe the Holy Grail isn't a physical object at all. Instead, it might represent humanity's eternal quest for meaning and self-discovery. The true Grail may lie not in cathedrals, caves, or secret chambers, but in the journey it inspires. This idea that the Grail is a metaphor for the pursuit of something greater explains why its legend continues to endure. The Grail is a mirror for the human condition, reminding us that the greatest treasures are often found within ourselves. The mystery of the Holy Grail isn't about whether it exists, but about what it means to those who seek it. Its power lies in its ability to challenge and inspire us, inviting us to explore not only history and myth, but also the deeper questions of our own lives. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the legend of the Holy Grail. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Armchair Archaeology for more explorations into history's greatest mysteries. What's your favorite theory about the Holy Grail? Do you think it's a lost relic waiting to be found, or a symbol of something far greater? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear them. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the flame of curiosity burning bright.